There was not a sound, and all the doors along the hall were shut tight. Just as she wondered who was behind the plain wooden door in front of her, it swung silently open. The room within was bare, and cold wind moaned through open windows, stirring old ash on the hearth. A big dog lay curled up on the floor, shaggy tail across its nose, between the door and a thick pillar of rough-cut black stone that stood in the middle of the floor. A large, shaggy-haired young man sat leaning back against the pillar in only his small clothes, head lolling as if asleep. A massive black chain ran around the pillar and across his chest, the ends gripped in his clenched hands. Asleep or not, his heavy muscles strained to hold that chain tight, to prison himself against the pillar. "Perrin?" she said wonderingly. She stepped into the room. "Perrin, what's the matter with you?" "Perrin!" The dog uncurled itself and stood. It was not a dog, but a wolf, all black and gray, lips curling back from glistening white teeth, yellow eyes regarding her as they might have a mouse it meant to eat. Egwene stepped back hastily into the hall in spite of herself. "Perrin, wake up! There's a wolf!" Varen had said what happened here was real and showed the scar to prove it. The wolf's teeth looked as big as knives. "Perrin, wake up! Tell it I'm a friend!" She embraced Saidar. The wolf stalked nearer. Perrin's head came up, his eyes opened drowsily. Two sets of yellow eyes regarded her. The wolf gathered himself. "Hopper!" Perrin shouted. "No! Egwene!" The door swung shut before her face, and total darkness enveloped her. She could not see, but she felt sweat beading on her forehead, not from heat. "Light, where am I? I don't like this place. I want to wake up." A whirring sound, and she jumped before she recognized a cricket. A frog gave a bass croak in the darkness, and the chorus answered it. As her eyes adapted, she dimly made out trees all around her. Clouds blanketed the stars, and the moon was a thin sliver. Off to her right through the woods was another glow, flickering, a campfire. She considered a moment before moving. Wanting to wake up had not been enough to take her away from Teleron-Riad, and she still had not found out anything useful. And she had not been hurt in any way. So far, she thought, shivering. But she had no idea who, or what, was at that campfire. It could be Murdral. Besides, I'm not dressed for running around in the forest. It was the last thought that decided her. She prided herself on knowing when she was being foolish. Taking a deep breath, she gathered up her silken skirts and crept closer. She might not have Nynaeve's skill at woodcraft, but she knew enough to avoid stepping on dead twigs. At last she peered carefully around the trunk of an old oak at the campfire. The only one there was a tall young man, sitting and staring into the flames. Rand. Those flames did not burn wood. They did not burn anything that she could see. The fire danced above a bare patch of ground. She did not think they even scorched the soil. Before she could move, Rand raised his head. She was surprised to see he was smoking a pipe, a thin ribbon of tabac smoke lifting from the bowl. He looked tired, so very tired. "Who's out there?" he demanded loudly. "You've rustled enough leaves to wake the dead, so you might as well show yourself." Egwene's lips compressed, but she stepped out. "I did not." "It's me, Rand. Do not be afraid. It is a dream. I must be in your dreams." He was on his feet so suddenly that she stopped dead. He seemed in some way larger than she remembered, and a touch dangerous. Perhaps more than a touch. His blue-gray eyes seemed to burn like frozen fire. "Do you think I don't know it is a dream?" he sneered. "I know that makes it no less real." He stared angrily out into the darkness as if looking for someone. "How long will you try?" he shouted at the night. "How many faces will you send? My mother, my father, now her. Pretty girls won't tempt me with a kiss, not even one I know. I deny you, father of lies. I deny you." "Rand," she said uncertainly. "It's Egwene. I am Egwene." There was a sword in his hands, suddenly, out of nowhere. Its blade was worked out of a single flame, slightly curved and graven with a heron. "My mother gave me honey cake," he said in a tight voice, with the smell of poison rank on it. "My father had a knife for my ribs. She offered kisses and more." Sweat slicked his face. His stare seemed enough to set her afire. "What do you bring?" "You are going to listen to me, Randolph Thor, if I have to sit on you." She gathered Saidar, channeled the flows to make the air hold him in a net. The sword spun in his hands, roaring like an open furnace. She grunted and staggered. It felt as if a rope stretched too tight had broken and snapped back into her. Rand laughed. "I learn, you see. When it works," he grimaced and started toward her. "I could stand any face but that one." "Not her face, burn you!" The sword flashed out. Egwene fled. She was not sure what it was she did or how, but she found herself back among the rolling hills under a sunny sky, with larks singing and butterflies playing. She drew a deep, shuddering breath. "I've learned..." "What?" "That the Dark One is still after Rand? I knew that already. That maybe the Dark One wants to kill him? That's different. Unless maybe he's gone mad already and does not know what he is saying. Light, why couldn't I help him? Oh, Light, Rand." She took another long breath to calm herself. "The only way to help him is to gentle him," she muttered. "As well go ahead and kill him." Her stomach twisted and knotted. "I'll never do that. Never." A red bird had perched on a cloudberry bush nearby, crest lifting as it tilted its head to watch her cautiously. She addressed the bird. "Well, I am not helping anything standing here talking to myself, am I? Or talking to you either." The red bird took wing as she stepped toward the bush. It was still a flash of crimson as she took the next step, vanished into a thicket as she took a third. She stopped and fished the stone ring on its cord out of the front of her dress. Why was it not changing? Everything had changed so fast up till now that she could hardly catch her breath. Why not now? Unless there was some answer right here. She looked around uncertainly. The wildflowers taunted her, and the lark song mocked her. This place seemed too much of her own making. Determined, she tightened her hand around the ter'angreal. "Take me where I need to be." She shut her eyes and concentrated on the ring. It was stone, after all. Earth should give her some feeling for it. "Do it. Take me where I need to be." Once again she embraced Saidar, fed a trickle of the one power into the ring. She knew it did not need any flow of power directed at it to work, and she did not try to do anything to it, only to give it more of the power to use. "Take me to where I can find an answer. I need to know what the Black Ajah wants. Take me to the answer." "Well, you found your way at last, child. All sorts of answers here." Egwene's eyes snapped open. She stood in a great hall, its vast domed ceiling supported by a forest of massive red stone columns, and hanging in midair was a sword of crystal, gleaming and sparkling as it slowly revolved. She was not certain, but she thought it might be the sword Rand had been reaching for in that dream. That other dream. This all felt so real, she had to keep reminding herself it was a dream, too. An old woman stepped out of the shadows of the column, bent and hobbling with a stick. Ugly did not begin to describe her. She had a bony, pointed chin, an even bonier, sharper nose, and it seemed there were more warts growing hairs on her face than there was face. "Who are you?" Egwene said. The only people she had seen so far in Tel'aran'rhiod were those she already knew, but she did not think she could have forgotten this poor old woman. "Just poor old Sylvie, my lady," the old woman cackled. At the same time, she managed a stoop that might have been meant for a curtsy, or possibly a cringe. "You know poor old Sylvie, my lady.
Hey, Dark Angel, how you doing?
Served your family faithfully all these years.
Hope you're doing well.
Does this old face still frighten you? Don't let it, my lady. It serves me when I need it as good as a prettier." "Of course it does," Egwene said. "It's a strong face, a good face, She hoped the woman believed it. Whoever this Sylvie was, she seemed to think she knew Egwene. Perhaps she knew answers, too. Sylvie, you said something about finding answers.
Hell yeah, I hope you have a good day at work,
You've
Dark
come to
Angel.
the right place for answers, my lady. The heart of the stone is full of answers and secrets. The High Lords would not be pleased to see us here, my lady. Oh, no. None but the High Lords enter here, and servants, of course. She gave a sly
Hell yeah,
screech
Dark
and laughed.
Angel.
The High Lords don't sweep
Hope she has a
and
safe
mop,
trip.
but who sees a servant? What kind of secrets? But Sylvie was hobbling toward the crystal sword. Plots, she said as if to herself. All of them pretending to serve the great lord, and all the while plotting and planning to regain what they lost. Each one thinking he or she is the only one plotting. Ishamael is a fool. What? Egwene said sharply. What did you say about Ishamael? The old woman turned to present a crooked, ingratiating
Hope
smile.
you have a good day at work too, Dark Angel.
It's the thing poor folks say, my lady. It turns the Forsaken's power, calling them fools. Makes you feel good and safe. Even the shadow can't take being called a fool. Try it, my lady. Say, Baalzamon is a fool. Egwene's lips twitched on the edge of a smile. Baalzamon is a fool. You are right, Sylvie. It actually did feel good, laughing at the Dark One. The old woman chuckled. The sword revolved just beyond her shoulder. Sylvie, what is that? Kalandor, my lady. You know that, don't you? The sword that cannot be touched. Abruptly, she swung her stick behind her. A foot from the sword, the stick stopped with a dull thwack and bounded. Sylvie grinned wider. The sword that is not a sword, though there's precious little what it is, but none can touch it save one. They saw that who put it here. The Dragon Reborn will hold Kalandor one day and prove to the world he's the dragon by doing it. The first proof, anyway. Lose that for all the world to see and grovel before. Ah, the High Lords don't like having it here. They like nothing to do with the power. They'd rid themselves of it if they could. If they could. I suppose there's others would take it if they could. What wouldn't one of the Forsaken give to hold Kalandor? Egwene stared at the sparkling sword. If the prophecies of the dragon were true, if Rand was the dragon as Moiraine claimed, he would wield it one day, though from the rest of what she knew of the prophecies concerning Kalandor, she could not see how it could ever come to be. But if there's a way to take it, maybe the Black Ajah knows how. If they know it, I can figure it out. Cautiously, she reached out with the power, probing at whatever held and shielded the sword. Her probe touched something.
Hell yeah, Dark Angel.
She could sense which of the 5 powers had been used here: air and fire and spirit. She could trace.
Yeah, he's usually pretty much on the party all the time.
Set with a strength that amazed her. There were gaps in that weave.
We're off doing
Spaces where
something.
her probe should slide through. When she tried, it was like fighting the strongest part of the weave head on. It hit her then, what she was trying to force a way through.
Hell yeah, Dark Angel.
Vanish. Half that wall had been woven using Saidar. The other half, the part she could not sense or touch, had been made with Saidin. That was not it exactly. The wall was all of one piece, but it was close enough. A stone wall stops a blind woman as surely as one who can see it. Footsteps echoed in the distance. Boots. Egwene could not tell how many there were or from which direction they were coming, but Sylvie gave a start and immediately stared off among the columns. He's coming to stare at it again, she muttered. Awake or asleep, he wants...
Because you're never at a party anyways.
And put on a worried smile. You must leave now, my lady. He mustn't find you here, or even know you've been. Egwene was already backing in among the columns, and Sylvie followed, flapping her hands and waving her stick. I am going, Sylvie. I just have to remember the way. She fingered the stone ring. Take me back to the hills. Nothing happened. She channeled a hair-like flow to the ring. Take me back to the hills. The red stone columns still surrounded her. The boots were closer, close enough not to be swallowed in their own echoes anymore. You don't know the way out, Sylvie said flatly, then went on in a
You still stay in the
whisper,
parties because there's other ones that are in the party that play other games.
Oh, my lady, this is a dangerous place to come into if you don't know the way out. Come, let poor old Sylvie take you.
Oh, especially after you get married, you won't be on.
Pack you up safe in your bed, my lady. She wrapped both arms around Egwene, urging her further from the sword. Not that Egwene needed much urging. The boots had stopped. He, whoever he was probably gazing at Kalendor. Just show me the way, Egwene whispered back. Or tell me. There's no need to push. The old woman's fingers had somehow gotten tangled around the stone ring. Don't touch that, Sylvie. Safe in your bed. Pain annihilated the world. With a throat-wrenching shriek, Egwene sat up in the dark, sweat rolling down her face. For a moment, she had no idea where she was and did not care. Oh, light, she moaned. That hurt. Oh, light, that hurt. She ran her hands over herself, sure her skin must be scored or wealed to make such a burning, but she could not find a mark. We are here, Nynaeve's voice said from the darkness.
Oh yeah, that's because you could change your moderators now if you want and stuff. What they call managing moderators. So you can actually
I'm back.
give someone a wrench or take away a wrench or
one of the candles was giving
put a other moderator in a timeout.
And the spill she had lit with flint and steel in the other. Then she smiled, and every candle in the room burst into flame. She stopped the washstand and came back to the bed with a cool, damp cloth to wash Egwene's face. Was it bad? She asked worriedly. You never stirred. You never mumbled. We did not know whether to wake you or not. Hurriedly, Egwene fumbled the leather cord from around her neck and hurled it and the stone ring across the room. Next time, she panted. We decide on a time and you wake me after it. Wake me if you have to stick my head in a basin of water. She had not realized that she had decided there would be a next time. Would you put your head in a bear's mouth just to show you weren't afraid? Would you do it twice just because you've done it once and didn't die? Yet it was more than a matter of proving to herself that she was not afraid. She was afraid and knew it. But so long as the Black Aja had those Terangrial Corianen had studied, she would have to keep going back.
Be right back,
Sure
I go get a refill my drink.
If she could find answers about the Black Aja there, perhaps other answers too, if half what she had been told about dreaming were true, she had to go back. But not tonight, she said softly. Not yet. What happened? Nynaeve asked. What did you dream? Egwene lay back on the bed and told them. Of it all, the only thing she left out was about Perrin talking to the wolf. She left the wolf out altogether. She felt a little guilty about keeping secrets from Elaine and Nynaeve, but it was Perrin's secret to tell, when and if he chose, not hers. The rest she gave them word for word, describing everything. When she was done, she felt emptied. Aside from being tired, Elaine said, did he look hurt? Egwene, I cannot believe he would ever hurt you. I cannot believe he would. Rand, Nynaeve said dryly, will have to look after himself a while longer. Elaine blushed. She looked pretty doing it. Egwene realized that Elaine looked pretty doing anything, even crying or scrubbing pots. Kalendor, Nynaeve continued, the heart of the stone. That was marked on the plan. I think we know where the Black Aja is. Elaine had regained her poise. It does not change the trap, she said. If it is not a diversion, it is a trap.
Hell yeah, Dark Angel. I have to keep an eye out for that one.
The best way to catch whoever says is spring it and wait for him to come. Or her in this instance. You mean go to Tyr? Egwene said, and Nynaeve nodded. The Amerlin has cut us loose, it seems. We make our own decisions, remember?
Had a what?
At least we know
Loganberry?
the Black Aja is in Tyr.
I don't think I have, Dark Angel.
Here, all we can do is sit and stew in our own suspicions of everybody. Wonder if there is another grey man out there. I would rather be the hound than the rabbit. I have to write to my mother, Elaine said. When she saw the looks they gave her, her voice became defensive.
Definitely haven't had that. Definitely sounds
once without her knowing
like it'd be tasty.
If I do it again, you do not know Mother's temper. She could send Gareth Bryn and the whole army against Tarvalon, or hunting after us. You could stay here, Egwene said. No, I will not let you two go alone. And I won't stay here wondering if the sister teaching me is a dark friend, or if the next Grey Man will come after me. She gave a small
Hell yeah, Dark Angel.
I will not work in the kitchens while you two are off adventuring either. I just have to tell my mother that I am out of the tower on the Amelin's orders, so she won't become furious if she hears rumors. I do not have to tell her where we are going or why. You surely had better not, Nynaeve said. She very likely would come after you if she knew about the Black Ajah. For that matter, you can't know how many hands your letter will pass through before it reaches her, or what eyes might read it. Best not to say anything you don't know. That's enough. The Amelin does not know I have to say it with no chance of her seeing it. Think on that. Nynaeve's brows furrowed. Perhaps once we're on our way, you could leave it at Arengil on the way downriver if you find someone there going to Cambridge. A sight of one of those papers the Amelin gave us might convince somebody. We will have to hope they work on ship captains too, unless one of you has more coin than I have.
Either that or
shook her head dolefully.
this might be like a bigger city thing.
They had possessed had
So I do live in a small little town.
Except for a few coppers each. When? She had to stop and clear her throat. When do we leave? Tonight?
Hell yeah, Dark Angel. Definitely appreciate it.
But then she shook her head.
Have a good day at work.
Her gesture took her to the line where it had bounced off the wall. We will give the Amerlin one more chance to seek us out. When we finish with breakfast, you both pack what you want to take, but keep it light. We have to leave the town. If the Amerlin is by midday, I need to be on a trading ship, shoving that paper down the captain's throat if need be, before prime sounds. How does that sound to you? It sounds excellent, Elaine said firmly. And Egwene said, tonight or tomorrow the sun
right, definitely might be reaching.
She wished she sounded as confident as Elaine. Then we'd best get some sleep. Nynaeve, Egwene said in a small voice. I don't want to be alone tonight. It pained her to make that admission. I don't either, Elaine said. I keep thinking about the soulless. I do not know why, but they frighten me even more than the Black Ajah. I suppose, Nynaeve said slowly, I don't really want to be alone myself. She eyed the bed where Egwene lay. That looks big enough for three if everybody keeps her elbows to herself.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that part.
Later, when they were shifting about, trying to find a way to lie that did not feel so crowded, Nynaeve suddenly laughed.
I always forget about that, you being in Canada.
You are not that ticklish. I just thought of someone who'd be happy to carry Elaine's letter for her. Happy to leave Tarvalon, too. In fact, I'd bet on it.
Chapter 28. A Way Out. Clad only in his breeches, Matt was just finishing a snack after breakfast. Some ham, 3 apples, bread, and butter. When the door of his room opened, and Nynaeve, Egwene, and Elaine filed in.
Oh yeah, most definitely will, Dark Angel.
He got up for his shirt and stubbornly sat down again. They could at least have knocked. In any case, it was good to see their faces. At first, it was. Well, you do look better, Egwene said. As if you have had a month of good food and rest, Elaine said. Nynaeve pressed a hand to his forehead. He flinched before he recalled that she had done much the same for at least 5 years back home. She was just the wisdom then, he thought. She wasn't wearing that ring. She had noticed his flinch. She gave him a tight smile. You look ready to be up and about, to me. Are you tired of being cooped up yet? You never could stand 2 days in a row indoors. He eyed the last apple core reluctantly, then dropped it back on the plate.
Oh, yeah.
Almost.
Well, we most definitely
he started
will,
to lick
Dark
the juice off
Angel.
his fingers, but they were all three looking at him and still smiling. He realized he was trying to decide which of them was prettiest and could not. Had they been anybody but who and what they were, he would have asked any and all of them to dance a jig or a reel. He had danced with Egwene often enough back home, and even once with Nynaeve, but that seemed a long time ago. One pretty woman means fun at the dance. 2 pretty women mean trouble in the house. 3 pretty women mean a run for the hills. He gave Nynaeve an even tighter smile than her own. My dad used to say that. You're up to something, Nynaeve. You're all smiling like cats staring at a finch caught in a thorn bush. And I think I am the finch. The smile
glad to help you wake up.
He noticed their hands and wondered why they all looked as if they had been washing dishes. The daughter heir of Andor surely never washed a dish, and he had as hard a time imagining Nynaeve at it, even knowing she had done her own back in Emond's Field. They all 3 wore great serpent reins now. That was new, and not a particularly pleasant surprise. Light, it had to happen sometime. It's none of my business. That is all there is to it. None of my business. It just isn't. Egwene shook her head, but it seemed as much for the other 2 women as for him. I told you we should ask him straight out. He's stubborn as any mule when he wants to be, and tricks him as a cat. You are mad. You know it, so stop frowning. He put his grin back quickly. Hush, Egwene, Nynaeve said. Mad. Just because we want to ask you does not mean we don't care how you feel. We do care, and you know that. Unless you're being even more wool-headed than usual. Are you well? You look remarkably well compared to how I last saw you. It really does look more like a month than 2 days. I'm ready to run 10 miles and dance a jig at the end of it. His stomach growled, reminding him how long it was to midday yet, but he ignored it and hoped they had not noticed. He almost did feel as if he had had a month of rest and food, and had 1 meal in the last day. What favor? He asked suspiciously. Nynaeve did not ask favors in his recollection. Nynaeve told people what to do and expected to see it done. I want you to carry a letter for me, Elaine said before Nynaeve could speak. To my mother in Cayman. She smiled, making a dimple in her cheek. I would appreciate it so very much, Matt. The morning light through the windows seemed to pick out highlights in her hair. I wonder if she likes to dance. He pushed the thought right out of his head. That does not sound too very hard, but it's a long trip. What do I get out of it? From the look on her face, he did not think that dimple had failed her very often. She drew herself up, slim and proud. He could almost see a throne behind her. Are you a loyal subject of Andor? Do you not wish to serve the Lion and your daughter heir? Matt snickered. I told you that would not work either, Egwene said. Not with him. Elaine had a wry twist to her mouth. I thought it worth a try. It always works on the gods in Cayman. You said if I smiled. She cut off short, very obviously not looking at him. What did you say, Egwene? He thought, furious. That I'm a fool for any girl who smiles at me? He kept his outward calm, though, and managed to maintain his grin. I wish asking were enough, Egwene said. But you do not do favors, do you, Matt? Do you ever do anything without being coaxed, wheedled, or bullied? He only smiled at her. I will dance with both of you, Egwene, but I won't run errands. For an instant, he thought she was going to stick out her tongue at him. If we can go back to what we planned in the first place, Nynaeve said in a too calm voice. The other 2 nodded, and she turned her attentions on him. For the first time since coming in, she looked like the wisdom of old, with a stare that could pin you in your tracks, and her braid ready to lash like a cat's tail. You are even ruder than I remembered, Matrim Cawthon. With you sick so long, and Egwene and Elaine and I taking care of you like a babe in swaddling, I had almost forgotten. Even so, I would think you'd have a little gratitude in you. You've talked about seeing the world, seeing great cities. Well, there's a better city than Cayman. Do what you want, show your gratitude, and help someone all at the same time. She produced a folded parchment from inside her cloak and set it on the table. It was sealed with a lily and golden yellow wax. You cannot ask for more than that. He eyed the paper regretfully. He barely remembered passing through Camelin once with Rand. It was a shame to stop them now, but he thought it best. If you want the fun of the jig, you have to pay the harper sooner or later. And the way Nynaeve was now, the longer he kept from paying, the worse it would be. Nynaeve, you can't. What do you mean you cannot? Are you a fly in the wall or a man? A chance to do a favor for the daughter heir of Andor, to see Caemlyn, to meet Queen Morghese herself in all probability, and you cannot? I really do not know what more you could possibly want. Don't you skitter away like grease on a griddle this time, Matrim Coffin. Or has your heart changed so you like seeing these all around you? She waved her left hand in his face, practically hitting him in the nose with her ring. Please, Matt, Elaine said, and Egwene was staring at him as if he had grown horns like a Trolloc. He squirmed on his chair. It is not that I don't want to, I cannot. The Amarant's made it so I can't get up the island. Change that, and I will carry your letter in my teeth, Elaine.
Be right back.
Looks passed between them. He sometimes wondered if women could read each other's minds. They certainly seemed to read his when he least wanted it. But this time, whatever they had decided silently among themselves, they had not read his thoughts. Explain, Nynaeve said curtly. Why would the Amaran want to keep you here? He shrugged and looked her straight in the eye and gave her his best rueful grin. It's because I was sick. Because it went on so long. She said she would not let me go until she was sure I wouldn't go off somewhere and die. Not that I'm going to, of course. Die, I mean. Nynaeve frowned and jerked her braid and suddenly took his head between her hands. A chill ran through him. Light the power. Before the thought was done, she had released him. What? What did you do to me, Nynaeve? Not a tenth part of what you deserve in all likelihood, she said. You are as healthy as a bull. Weaker than you look, but healthy. I told you I was, he said uneasily. He tried to get his grin back. Nynaeve, she looked like you. The Amaran, I mean. Managing to loom even if she is a foot too short for it, and bullying. The way her eyebrows climbed, he decided that was not a road to go down any further. As long as he kept them away from the horn. He wondered if they knew. Well, anyway, I think they want to keep me here because of that dagger. I mean, until they figure out exactly how it did what it did. You know how Aes Sedai are. He gave a small laugh. They all just looked at him. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. Burn me, they want to be bloody Aes Sedai. Burn me, I'm going on too long. I wish Nynaeve would stop staring at me like that. Keep it short. The Amyrlin made it so I cannot cross a bridge or board a ship without an order from her. You see, it's not that I do not want to help. I just can't. But you will if we can get you out of Tar Valon, Nynaeve said intently. You get me out of Tar Valon and I'll carry Elaine to her mother on my back. Elaine's eyebrows went up this time, and Egwene shook her head, mouthing his name with a sharp look in her eyes. Women had no sense of humor sometimes. Nynaeve motioned the two of them to follow her to the windows, where they turned their backs to him, and talked so softly he could catch only a murmur. He thought he heard Egwene say something about only needing one if they stayed together. Watching, he wondered if they really thought they could get around the Amyrlin's order. If they can do that, I will carry their bloody letter. I really will carry it in my teeth. Without thinking, he picked up an apple core and bit off the end. One chew, and he hastily spit the mouthful of bitter seeds back onto the plate. When they came back to the table, Egwene handed him a thick folded paper. He eyed them suspiciously before opening it out. As he read, he began humming to himself without knowing it. What the bearer does is done at my order and by my authority. Obey and keep silent at my command. Swan Sanche, Watcher of the Seals, Flame of Tar Valon, the Amaran seat. And sealed at the bottom with the flame of Tar Valon in a circle of white wax as hard as stone. He realized he was humming a pocketful of gold and stopped. Is this real? You didn't... How did you get this? She did not forge it, if that is what you mean, Elaine said. Never you mind how he got it, Nynaeve said. It is real. That is all that need concern you. I would not show it around, were I you, or the Amyrlin will take it back. But it will get you past the guards and onto a ship. You said you'd take the letter if we did that. You can consider it in Morgaze's hands right now. He did not want to stop reading the paper, but he folded it back up anyway and laid it on top of Elaine's letter. You wouldn't happen to have a little coin to go with this, would you? Some silver? A gold mark or two? I have almost enough for my passage, but I hear things are growing expensive downriver. Nynaeve shook her head. Don't you have money? You gambled with Huron almost every night until you grew too sick to hold the dice. Why should things be more expensive downriver? We gamble for coppers, Nynaeve, and you would not even do that after a while. It doesn't matter. I will manage. Don't you listen to what people say? There's a civil war in Kyrian, and I hear it is bad in Tyr, too. I have heard a room at an inn in Arengil costs more than a good horse back home. We have been busy, she said sharply, and exchanged worried looks with Egwene and Elaine that set him wondering again. It doesn't matter. I can make out. There had to be gaming in the inns near the docks. A night with the dice would put him aboard a ship in the morning with a purse. Just you deliver that letter to Queen Morgaze, Matt, Nynaeve said, and do not let anyone know you have it. I'll take it to her. I said I would, didn't I? You would think I didn't keep my promises. The looks he got from Nynaeve and Egwene reminded him of a few he had not kept. I will do it. Blood it! I will do it! They stayed a while longer, talking of home for the most part. Egwene and Elaine sat on the bed, and Nynaeve took the armchair, while he kept his stool. Talk of Emond's Field made him homesick, and it seemed to make Nynaeve and Egwene sad, as if they were speaking of something they would never see again. He was sure their eyes moistened, but when he tried to change the subject, they brought it back again, to people they knew, to the festivals of Beltane and Sunday, to harvest dances and picnic gatherings for the shearing. Elaine talked to him of Camelin, of what to expect at the royal palace, and who to speak to, and a little of the city. Sometimes she held herself in a way that made him all but see a crown on her head. A man would have to be a fool to let himself get involved with a woman like her. When they rose to leave, he was sorry to see them go. He stood, suddenly feeling awkward. Look, you have done me a favor here. He touched the Amerlin's paper on the table. A big favor. I know you're all going to do Aes Sedai. He stumbled a little on that. And you will be a queen one day, Elaine. But if you ever need help, if there's anything I can do, I will come. You can count on it. Did I say something funny? Elaine had a hand over her mouth, and Egwene was struggling openly with a laugh. No, Matt, Nynaeve said smoothly, but her lips twitched. Just something I know about men. You would have to be a woman to understand, Elaine said. Journey well and safely, Matt, Egwene said. Remember, if a woman does need a hero, she needs him today, not tomorrow. The laughter bubbled out of her. He stared at the door closing behind them. Women, he decided for at least the 100th time, were odd. Then his eyes fell on Elaine's letter and the folded paper lying atop it. The Amerlin's blessed, not to be understood, but welcome as a fire in winter paper. He danced a little caper in the middle of the flowered carpet. Camelin to see and the queen to meet. Your own words free me of you, Amerlin, and get me away from Celine, too. You'll never catch me, he laughed, and meant it for both of them. You'll never catch Matt Cawthon.
Chapter 29. A Trap to Spring. In a corner, the spit dog was lying at its ease. Glaring at it, Nynaeve mopped sweat from her forehead with her hand and leaned her back into doing the work he should have done. I'd not have put it past them to shove me in his wicker wheel instead of letting me turn this light-forsaken handle. Aes Sedai, in them all. It was a measure of her upset that she used such language, and another that she did not even notice she had done it. She did not think the fire in the long gray stone fireplace would seem any hotter if she crawled into it. She was sure the brindle dog was grinning at her. Elaine was skimming grease out of the dripping pan under the roasts with a long-handled wooden spoon, while Egwene used its twin to baste the meat. The great kitchen went on about its midday routine around them. Even the novices had grown so used to seeing accepted there that they hardly even glanced at the three women. Not that the cooks allowed the novices to dawdle for gawking. Work built character, so the Aes Sedai said, and the cooks saw to it that the novices built strong character. And the three accepted, too. Laras, the mistress of the kitchens, she was really the chief cook, but so many had used the other for so long that it might as well have been her title, came over to examine the roasts, and the women sweating over them. She was more than merely stout, with layers of chins, and a spotless white apron that could have made 3 novice dresses. She carried her own long-handled wooden spoon like a scepter. It was not for stirring, that spoon. It was for directing those under her and smacking those who were not building character quickly enough to suit her. She studied the roasts, sniffed disparagingly, and turned her frown on the 3 accepted. Nynaeve met Laras's look with a level look of her own and kept turning the spit. The massive woman's face never altered. Nynaeve had tried smiling, but that did nothing to change Laras's expression. Stopping work to speak to her, quite civilly, had been a disaster. It was bad enough being bullied and chivied by Aes Sedai. She had to put up with that, however much it rankled and burned, if she was to learn how to use her abilities. Not that she liked what she could do. It was one thing to know Aes Sedai were not dark friends for channeling the power, but quite another to know she herself could channel. Yet she had to learn if she was to get back at Moiraine. Hating Moiraine for what she had done to Egwene and the other Emmons Fielders, pulling their lives apart and manipulating them all for Aes Sedai purposes, was nearly all that kept her going. But to be treated as a lazy, none-too-bright child by this Laras, to be forced to curtsy and scurry for this woman she could have put in her place with a few well-chosen words back home, that made her grind her teeth almost as much as did the thought of Moiraine. Maybe if I just do not look at her. No, I will be burned if I'll drop my eyes before this cow. Lara sniffed more loudly and walked away. She rolled from side to side as she crossed the freshly mopped gray tiles. Still bending with spoon and grease pot, Elaine glowered after her. If that woman strikes me but once more, I shall have Gareth Bryn arrest her and— Be quiet, Egwene whispered. She did not stop basting the roasts, and she never looked at Elaine. She has ears like a— Laras turned back as if she had indeed heard, her frown deepening and her mouth open wide. Before a sound emerged, the Amyrlin seat entered the kitchen like a whirlwind. Even the striped stole on her shoulders seemed to bristle. For once, Lyanna was nowhere to be seen. At last, Nynaeve thought grimly, and not before time either. But the Amyrlin did not glance her way. The Amyrlin did not say a word to anyone. Running her hand across a tabletop scrubbed bone white, she looked at her fingers and grimaced as if at filth. Laras was at her side in an instant, all smiles, but the Amyrlin's flat stare made her swallow them in silence. The Amyrlin stalked about the kitchen. She stared at the women slicing oatcake. She glared at the women peeling vegetables. She sneered into the soup kettles, then at the women tending them. The women became engrossed in studying the surface of the soup. Her frown set the girls carrying plates and bowls out to the dining hall to a run. Her glower put the novices darting like mice sighting a cat. By the time she had made her way half around the kitchen, every woman there was working twice as fast as she had been. By the time she completed her circuit, Laras was the only one even daring to glance at her. The Amyrlin stopped in front of the roasting spit, fists on her hips, and looked at Laras. She only looked, expressionless, blue eyes cold and hard. The large woman gulped, and her chins wobbled as she smoothed her hair. The Amyrlin did not blink. Laras's eyes dropped, and she shifted heavily from foot to foot. If the mother will pardon me, she said in a faint voice. Making something that might have been meant for a curtsy, she rushed away, so forgetting herself that she joined the women at one of the soup kettles and began stirring with her own spoon. Nynaeve smiled, keeping her head down to hide it. Egwene and Elaine kept working too, but they also kept glancing at the Amyrlin, standing with her back to them not 2 paces away. The Amerlin was spreading her stare across the entire kitchen from where she stood. "If they are this easily cowed," she muttered softly, "perhaps they really have been getting away with too much for too long." Easily cowed indeed, Nynaeve thought. Pitiful excuses for women. All she did was look at them. The Amerlin glanced over a stole-covered shoulder, caught her eye for an instant. Suddenly, Nynaeve realized she was turning the spit faster. She told herself she had to pretend to be cowed like everyone else. The Amerlin's gaze fell on Elaine, and abruptly she spoke, nearly loud enough to rattle the copper pots and pans hanging on the walls. "There are some words I will not tolerate in a young woman's mouth, Elaine of House Trakand. If you let them in, I will see them scrubbed out." Everyone in the kitchen jumped. Elaine looked confused, and indignation crept across Egwene's face. Nynaeve shook her head, small, frantic shake. "Hold your tongue, don't you see what she is doing?" But Egwene did open her mouth, with a respectful if determined, "Mother, she did not—" "Silence!" The Amerlin's roar produced another ripple of jumps. "Laras, can you find something to teach two girls to speak when they should, and say what they should? Mistress of the kitchens? Can you manage that?" Laras came waddling faster than Nynaeve had ever seen the woman move before, darting at Elaine and Egwene to seize an ear of each, all the while repeating, "Yes, mother, immediately, mother, as you command, mother." She hurried the two young women out of the kitchen, as if eager to escape the Amerlin's stare. The Amerlin was now close enough to Nynaeve to touch her, still looking over the kitchen. A young cook, turning with a mixing bowl in her hands, chanced to catch the Amerlin's eye. She gave a great squeak as she scuttled away across the floor. "I did not mean for Egwene to be taught." The Amerlin barely moved her lips. It looked as if she were muttering to herself, and from the expression on her face, no one in the kitchen wanted to hear what she was saying. Nynaeve could just make out the words, but perhaps it will teach her to think before she speaks. Nynaeve turned the spit and kept her head down, trying to look as if she were also muttering under her breath if anyone looked. "I thought you were going to keep a close eye on us, Mother, so we could report what we find. If I come to stare at you every day, daughter, some would grow suspicious." The Amerlin kept up her study of the kitchen. Most of the women seemed to be avoiding even looking in her direction for fear of incurring her wrath. "I plan to have you brought to my study after the midday meal, to scold you for not choosing your studies," replied to Lyanna. "But there is news that could not wait. Shirian found another gray man, a woman, dead as last week's fish, and not a mark on her. She was laid out as if resting, right in the middle of Shirian's bed. Not very pleasant for Shirian." Nynaeve stiffened, and the spit halted for a moment before she put it back to revolving. "Shirian had a chance to see the lists Varen gave to Egwene. So did Elida. I make no accusations, but they had the chance. And Egwene said Alanna behaved oddly, too." "She told you of that, did she?" "Alanna is Arafellan. They have strange ideas about honor and debts in Arafel." She shrugged dismissively, but said, "I suppose I can keep an eye on her." "Have you learned anything useful yet, child?" "Some," Nynaeve muttered grimly. "What about keeping an eye on Shirian? Maybe she didn't just find that gray man. The Amerlin could watch Elida too, for that matter. So Alanna really did. I do not understand why you trust Elsa Grinwell, but your message was helpful." In short, quick sentences, Nynaeve told of the things they had found in the storeroom under the library, making it seem only she and Egwene had gone, and added the conclusions they had reached concerning them. She did not mention Egwene's dream, or whatever it had been. Egwene insisted it had been real, of Telairan Riad. Nor did she speak of the Terangrial Varen had given Egwene. She could not make herself entirely trust the woman wearing the seven-striped stole, or any woman who could wear the shawl, for that matter, and it seemed best to keep some of her. After it was done, the Amerlin was silent so long that Nynaeve began to think the woman had not heard. She was about to repeat herself, a little louder, when the Amerlin finally spoke, still hardly moving her lips. "I sent no message, daughter. The things Leandrin and the others left were searched thoroughly and burned after nothing was found. No one would use Black Aja leavings. As for Elsa Grinwell, I remember the girl. She could have learned, had she applied herself, but all she wanted was to smile at the men at the warder's practice yard. Elsa Grinwell was put on a trading vessel and sent back to her mother 10 days ago. Nynaeve tried to swallow the lump that had formed in her throat. The Amerlin's words made her think of bullies taunting smaller children. The bullies were always so contemptuous of the littler children, always so sure the small ones were too stupid to realize what was happening, that they made little effort to disguise their snares. That the Black Aja was so contemptuous of her made her blood boil. That they could set this snare filled her stomach with ice. Light. If Elsa was sent away, light. Anybody I talked to could be Leandrin or any of the others. Light. The spit had stopped. Hastily, she started it turning once more. No one seemed to have noticed, though. They were all still doing their best not to look at the Amerlin. And what do you mean to do about this so obvious trap? The Amerlin said softly, still staring over the kitchen away from Nynaeve. Do you mean to fall into this one, too? Nynaeve's face reddened. I know this trap for a trap, Mother. And the best way to catch whoever set a trap is to spring it and wait for him or her to come. It sounded weaker than it had when she had said it to Egwene and Elaine, after what the Amerlin had just told her, but she still meant it. Perhaps so, child. Perhaps it is the way to find them. If they do not come and find you held tightly in their net. She gave a vexed sigh. I will put gold in your room for the journey. And I will let it be whispered about that I've sent you out to a farm. Will Elaine be going with you? Nynaeve forgot herself enough to stare at the Amerlin, then hurriedly put her eyes back on her hands. Her knuckles were white on the spit handle. You scheming old... Why all the pretense if you knew? Your sly plots have had us squirming nearly as much as the Black Aja has. Why? The Amerlin's face had tightened, enough to make her force a more respectful tone. If I may ask, Mother. The Amerlin snorted. Putting more gaze back on the proper path, whether she wants to go or not, will be hard enough without her thinking I've sent her daughter to sea in a leaky skiff. This way I can say straight out that it was none of my doing. It may be a bit hard on Elaine when she finally has to face her mother, but I have 3 hounds now, not 2. I told you I'd have 100 if I could. She adjusted her stole on her shoulders. This has gone on long enough. If I stay this close to you, it may be noticed. Have you anything more to tell me, or to ask? Make it quick, daughter. What is Callandor, Mother? Nynaeve asked. This time it was the Amerlin who forgot herself, half turning toward Nynaeve before jerking herself back. They cannot be allowed to have that. Her whisper was barely audible, as if meant for her own ears alone. They cannot possibly take it. She took a deep breath, and her soft words firmed enough to be clear to Nynaeve, if to no one 2 paces further away. No more than 12 women in the tower.
Hey, Grandpa, how you doing?
And perhaps as many outside.
I definitely appreciate it. I'll probably be heading to bed here soon anyways, too. Would definitely appreciate you stopping by, Grandpa. I didn't think you were still up.
Only 2 more powerful were ever made, and neither of those was ever used. With Callandor in your hands, child, you could level a city at one blow. If you die keeping that out of the Black Aja's hands, you and Egwene and Elaine, all 3, you'll have done a service to the whole world and cheapened the price. How could they take it? Nynaeve asked. I thought only the Dragon Reborn could touch Callandor. The Amerlin gave her a sideways look, sharp enough to carve the roasts on the spit. They could be after something else, she said after a moment. They stole Terangrial here.
Oh, you
the
just blue
stone
screened?
The Tyr holds nearly as many Terangrial as the tower.
That sucks, bro.
I thought the High Lords hated anything to do with the One Power, Nynaeve whispered incredulously. Oh, they do hate it, child. Hate it and fear it. When they find a Tyran girl who can channel, they bundle her onto a ship for Tar Valon before the day is done, with hardly time to speak goodbyes to her family. The Amerlin's murmur was bitter with memory. Yet they hold one of the most powerful focuses of the power the world has ever seen inside their precious stone. It is my belief that is why they have collected so many Terangrial, and indeed anything to do with the power, over the years, as if by doing so they can diminish the existence of the thing they cannot rid themselves of, the thing that reminds them of their own doom every time they enter the heart of the stone. Their fortress that has broken 100 armies will fall as
Oh
one of the
damn, that
signs
really
the
sucks,
dragons are born.
Grandpa.
Not even the only sign, just one. How that must rankle their proud hearts. Their downfall will not even be the one great sign of the world's change. They cannot even ignore it by staying out of the heart. That is where lords of the land are raised to high lords, and where they must perform what they call the rite of the guarding 4 times a year, claiming that they guard the whole world against the dragon by holding Kalendor. It must bite at their souls like a bellyful of live silver pike, and no more than they deserve. She gave herself a shake, as if realizing she had said far more than she had intended. Is that all, child? Yes, Mother, Nynaeve said. Right. It always comes back to Rand, doesn't it? Always back to the Dragon Reborn. It was still an effort to think of him that way. That's all. The Amerlin shifted her stole again, frowning at the frenzied scurry in the kitchen. I'll have to set this right. I needed to speak to you without delay, but Laris is a good woman, and she manages the kitchen and the larder as well.
Oh yeah, Grandpa, you have a good night too.
Hands on the spit handle. Laris is a sour lump of lard, and too handy with that spoon by half. She thought she had muttered it under her breath, but she heard the Amerlin chuckle wryly. You are a fine judge of character, child. You must have done well as the wisdom of your village. It was Laris who went to Shiriam and demanded to know how long you 3 are to be kept to the dirtiest and hardest work, without a turn at lighter. She said she would not be a party to breaking any woman's health or spirit, no matter what I said. A fine judge of character, child. Laris came back into the kitchen doorway then, hesitating to enter her own domain. The Amerlin went to meet her, smiles replacing her frowns and stares. It all looks very well to me, Laris. The Amerlin's words came out loud enough for the entire kitchen to hear. I see nothing out of place and everything as it should be. You are to be commended. I think I will make Mistress of the Kitchens a formal title. The stout woman's face fluttered from uneasiness to shock to beaming pleasure. By the time the Amerlin swept out of the kitchen, Laris was all smiles. Her frown returned, though, as she looked from the Amerlin's departing back to
All right, everyone, probably gonna get off for right now.
Laris's
try to do a gaming stream tomorrow and my regular one at night.
Nynaeve tried smiling at the big woman.
So I thank everyone for stopping by and everyone who keeps stopping by and chilling with me for a little bit they do. Definitely appreciate all y'all's love and support. Until next time, everyone, stay safe.
I will smile at her.